The first time Naledi Maseko realized someone wanted her dead, she was not staring at a gun. She was staring at a balance sheet. 3 minutes later, the fire alarm tore through Hanseong Global's headquarters. Emergency doors sealed, security cameras went black. And somewhere on the top floor, a man who had spent 30 years protecting a lie quietly said, "The South African has seen too much." Naledi did not know who he was. She did not know why a routine audit had become a death sentence. She knew only this: someone was willing to kill over numbers, and numbers had never lied to her. People imagined forensic auditors hunting criminals. Naledi hunted inconsistencies, a payment made one day too early, a signature pressed harder than the others, a company that existed only on paper. Most fraud was not hidden by brilliance. It survived because decent people stopped asking one more question. At 34, Naledi had earned a reputation from Johannesburg to London for seeing what everyone else overlooked. She never raised her voice or made theatrical accusations. She followed the evidence until the truth had nowhere left to hide. It was why international regulators trusted her. It was also why powerful executives feared hearing her name. When Hanseong Global announced an independent audit, investors applauded. Inside the company, unease hid behind practiced smiles. The headquarters overlooked the Han River, wrapped in glass, pale stone, and the kind of silence money could buy. Employees bowed to senior executives. Assistants carried trays of tea through corridors lined with original art. Everything appeared disciplined, elegant, flawless, too flawless. Honest companies usually had messy filing cabinets and imperfect memories. Only frightened companies rehearsed perfection. During her first tour, Naledi paused before a timeline engraved into the main corridor. 1987, expansion into electronics. 1992, first global exports. 1996, record profits. Then nothing. The display jumped directly to 2001. 5 years had vanished. Most visitors would have kept walking. Naledi traced the empty section with one finger and remembered something her grandfather used to say while repairing watches in Soweto. When a gear is missing, do not stare at the gap. Ask what stopped turning. She opened her leather notebook, 1997 to 2001. Find out why. Her first board meeting lasted 42 minutes. At exactly 9 o'clock, the doors opened and every executive stood. Chairman Kim Hyun-kook entered without a word. Age had bent his shoulders slightly, but nothing else. His eyes were patient and precise, the eyes of a man who measured people before deciding what they were worth. They settled on Naledi, the famous auditor from Johannesburg. His English was flawless. "I prefer forensic accountant." A few executives laughed nervously. Chairman Kim did not. "I have read your reports. They have been expensive for several companies. The truth usually is." His smile faded for less than a second. Naledi noticed. People rarely disliked truth itself. They disliked its price. The meeting ended with formal bows and the soft scrape of chairs. As everyone prepared to leave, Chairman Kim spoke again. "Miss Maseko, the historical archive beneath this building is closed. Preservation work. I trust that will not interfere with your assignment." The sentence sounded courteous. It was not. It was the first restriction he had mentioned all morning. Naledi returned his calm smile. Not at all. Because there was one rule she had lived by throughout her career. When someone told her where not to look, she started there. That evening, alone in her hotel, she reviewed 20 years of Hanseong's financial statements. The numbers were almost beautiful. Revenue climbed steadily. Expenses remained predictable. Every audit opinion was clean. Real businesses stumbled. Hanseong's books looked as though someone believed perfection could be manufactured. Just after midnight, she found the floor. Suk Development Holdings. No employees. No public office. No products. Yet every December, millions entered its accounts, remained for exactly 48 hours, then moved into different Hanseong subsidiaries. Never early. Never late. People made mistakes. Systems repeated them. Naledi leaned toward the screen. Money does not disappear. People only hope nobody follows it. Across the street, a black sedan waited beneath a ginkgo tree, stripped bare by spring rain. A man in a charcoal suit lowered his binoculars and called the chairman. The auditor found the holding company. Chairman Kim's answer came after a long silence. "Do not stop her." The man frowned. "If she is as good as they say, She will lead us to the one thing we failed to destroy. The call ended. Naledi continued working, unaware that she had not merely found suspicious money. She had awakened a history someone had spent 30 years teaching the world to forget. Naledi reached Hanseong before sunrise. She preferred empty buildings. Silence made patterns easier to hear. By 8 o'clock, 3 years of transactions involving SG Development Holdings covered the conference table. The same pattern appeared every December. Money entered, waited 48 hours, then scattered across Hanseong subsidiaries. No delay, no clerical error, no variation. The records were not natural. They were performed. She requested the original incorporation documents. The elderly records manager, Mr. Choi, read the company name and lost his smile. Those files are unavailable. Under preservation? He glanced toward the ceiling camera. Yes, Naledi placed a transaction summary on his desk. This company moved hundreds of millions over 20 years. It has no staff, no address, no products, and no litigation. I have never met a business that worked so hard while doing nothing. For a moment, amusement softened his face. Then fear returned. Miss Maseko, finish the audit. Write the report they expect. Go home to Johannesburg. Were you instructed to tell me that? He looked away. She had her answer. On the way back to finance, Naledi saw a man watching from the far end of the corridor. Charcoal suit. No identification badge. No briefcase. Their eyes met. He walked away without hurrying. Good investigators did not chase people. People panicked, improvised, lied, evidence waited. A young assistant found her before lunch. Vice Chairman Kim would like to see you. Kim Min-jae was waiting in a quiet cafe overlooking the river. He had ordered 2 coffees and a plate of yakwa, small honey pastries, arranged with almost ceremonial care. I was told South Africans appreciate strong coffee, he said. We appreciate people who do not interrupt audits. He laughed. It made him look less like the immaculate heir from business magazines and more like a man who had once known how to relax. My father expects you to finish in 3 weeks. And you? I think you began asking dangerous questions on your first day. Naledi studied him. Is that a warning? I have not decided. He turned his cup slowly between his hands. When I was a boy, my mother told me that if someone says a door must never be opened, it is usually because they fear what is behind it. Your father closed the archive. Yes, you think he is afraid. Min-jae's expression tightened. My father does not believe he is afraid of anything. It was not an answer. It was more revealing than one. Later, an encrypted email arrived from Naledi's former mentor, Professor Elias Ndlovu. He had checked international corporate registries. Heir Development Holdings had been incorporated using legal references that no longer existed. Its original founder had been removed from every commercial database he could access. Not deceased. Not resigned. Removed, Naledi reopened the oldest digital filing. Most investigators studied words. She studied the page. The left margin was narrower than the right. The company seal sat slightly higher than seals on documents from the same year. Someone had rescanned the page. She overlaid it with another 1998 incorporation record. The margins aligned perfectly, except for a narrow strip missing from the bottom, exactly where the founder's signature should have been. They did not alter the company, she whispered. They erased a person. If you enjoy mysteries where one overlooked detail can break open an empire, stay with Naledi. The trail was only beginning. That evening she returned to Hanseong's historical corridor. The portraits of past leaders were spaced evenly, except for one gap that was slightly too wide. The wall had once held another frame. The paint beneath it was older. The mounting holes had been filled, but not perfectly. Beneath the polished surface, the building remembered. Naledi photographed the wall. From the mezzanine above, the man in the charcoal suit watched her. This time she saw the silver nameplate inside his jacket as he turned. Director Park. Chairman Kim's chief of staff. The man newspapers called his shadow. Park reached for his phone, then stopped. Something in the empty space on that wall held him motionless. Naledi returned to her office and enlarged the oldest shareholder register. One document number was missing from the sequence, 1998-116. Then 1998-118. File 1998-117 had not been misplaced. It had been removed deliberately. She wrote the number in her notebook and circled it twice. When she logged the request in Hanseong's audit portal, the system recorded it as usual. 11 minutes later, an account marked Executive Administration opened her request. Someone at the highest level was following every step she took. The audit was not being supervised, it was being hunted. And somewhere inside Hanseong, another person was watching the same trail for an entirely different reason. The next morning, Naledi created a document request for a project that did not exist. Project Orion. Capital Equipment Review. No such project. No such department. She submitted it through Hanseong's audit portal and waited. 11 minutes later, Executive Administration opened it. Naledi smiled. The watcher had taken the bait. She did not submit another genuine request. Instead, she visited Hanseong's corporate museum, where employees passed polished displays without slowing down. To Naledi, it looked less like a museum than a carefully edited memory. One display honored the founder who had built Hanseong through courage and vision. The photograph showed Chairman Kim standing alone outside the company's first factory. Naledi enlarged it on her tablet. 4 old mounting marks were visible along the wooden frame. The display had once held a wider photograph. Someone had replaced it with a smaller one. You are looking at the wrong picture. Min-jae stood behind her. I thought you might come here, he said. I hoped you would not. His eyes moved to the photograph. My father renovated this museum after my mother died. Naledi heard the hesitation. You think something changed? He ignored the question. Have you ever uncovered something you wished you had left buried? Once, what happened? A family lost everything. Were they guilty? Some were. And the innocent, they paid the highest price.
For the first time, they were not speaking as auditor and executive. They were two people who understood that truth could be righteous and still leave wounds. Min-jae looked at the empty space beside his father. I have walked past this wall since childhood. You were looking at what remained, Naledi said, not what was missing. That afternoon she placed 3 records side by side, the altered incorporation page, an early board resolution, and a shareholder register. Different departments, different years. The document numbers followed one sequence. Except for file 1998-117. She searched archived indexes and found a title attached to the missing number. Founder Intellectual Property Assignment. Naledi's pulse changed. Hanseong had not only erased a name, it had erased the document that decided who owned the company's original technology. She searched old supplier invoices instead. Cover-ups usually failed at the edges, in records too ordinary to attract attention. A 1997 invoice carried one line. Consulting Services D. Han Engineering. The surname again. Han. She searched every registry available to the audit team. Nothing, no company, no engineer, no contractor. Someone had removed D. Han so completely that he no longer officially existed. Yet one invoice had survived because someone had forgotten it. Real cover-ups did not fail because powerful people became careless. They failed because nobody could erase everything. Near sunset, Naledi returned to the historical corridor. This time she ignored the portraits and examined the baseboard beneath them. A decorative planter concealed a small brass plaque, dulled by years of dust. She crouched and wiped it clean. DH. 2 initials. The building itself was contradicting the company. Across Seoul, Chairman Kim listened while Director Park described what Naledi had found. The invoice, the missing file, the initials. Chairman Kim poured tea into a white porcelain cup. His hand remained steady. And my son? He was with her. The chairman watched steam rise between them. I spent 30 years teaching Min-jae how to inherit an empire. His tone never sharpened. One auditor is teaching him to question it. Park waited for an order. None came. Sir, should I restrict her access? No. Why? Chairman Kim lifted his cup. Because I have spent 30 years hiding the wrong thing. Park's face changed. If she is truly exceptional, she will not find missing money. She will find the missing man. That evening, Naledi requested the original architectural plans for Hanseong's headquarters. Facilities approved them immediately. Apparently, nobody imagined an auditor would investigate concrete instead of cash. The oldest drawing identified the portrait gallery by its original name. Founders Hall. Plural, at least 2 founders had once stood there. A maintenance report from 2002 documented a renovation. Reason: removal of secondary founder memorial. The approval signature had been blacked out, but the pressure marks remained. Naledi placed thin paper over the page and shaded it lightly with a pencil, the way her grandfather once revealed worn engravings on watch cases. Letters emerged. Hyun-kook. Chairman Kim had personally authorized the removal. Naledi looked from the blueprint to the old photograph. The missing founder now had initials, an engineering company, and a stolen place in Hanseong's history. What he did not yet have was a full name. Then Min-jae called. His voice was quiet. "I found something in my mother's library." Naledi heard more than urgency. She heard fear. "Come alone," he said, "and do not tell anyone where you are going." Min-jae's mother's library had remained locked for years. He opened it with an old brass key he wore on a chain beneath his shirt. The room smelled of cedar, dust, and the faint herbal scent of tea long absorbed into wood. Medical journals filled one wall. History and engineering texts filled another. "My mother was a surgeon," Min-jae said. She believed every system, whether a body or a company, revealed illness through small changes. Naledi smiled. "I would have liked her. So would she." The answer came too quickly. They both felt it. On the desk lay a notebook bound in faded blue cloth. Min-jae opened it carefully. His mother's handwriting moved between Korean and English. Most entries were observations, not accusations. One sentence had been underlined twice. "When records change, ask who benefits from forgetting." Naledi turned the page. Several entries referred to a man only as D. D warned me about the patent transfer. D believes Hyun-kook altered the founder agreement. D says the company is no longer safe. The final entry ended in the middle of a sentence. "If anything happens to me, the original proof is not in the archive. It is in the system that no one thinks to audit," because the rest of the page had been torn away. Something slipped from the notebook. A faded photograph of 3 people outside Hanseong's first factory. A younger Chairman Kim stood beside a smiling engineer in thick glasses. Min-jae's mother stood between them, her white coat visible beneath a raincoat. The engineer's face had been scratched repeatedly with a blade, not enough to destroy the image, enough to deny him an identity. On the back were 4 words. Opening day, April 1997. Min-jae stared at his mother. She kept this all those years, because someone wanted the man forgotten. Naledi examined the damage. The scratches were old, but the handwriting on the back was clear. Beneath the date, almost lost in a crease, was a single Korean character followed by an English surname. Han. Daniel Han. The ghost finally had a name. Min-jae sat down slowly. "I have never heard it." That was the point. Naledi did not soften the truth. He deserved better than comfort built on uncertainty. They searched the engineering journals. 1 volume was missing. The gap on the shelf was too narrow for the book that belonged there. Naledi measured it with 2 fingers. Something thinner was stored here. A folder. Removed by whom? She looked toward the door. Someone who knew we would come. A faint smell reached her. Petrol. Naledi turned sharply. Smoke curled beneath the library door. Min-jae grabbed the notebook and photograph as the lights failed. Naledi wrapped a wool throw around her hand and opened the door. Flames had caught the runner in the corridor, but the fire was too controlled, too narrow. It was designed to consume 1 room before the building alarm brought help. They moved low beneath the smoke and reached the staircase as sprinklers erupted. At the bottom, Director Park stood beside an emergency panel. He had activated the system manually. His charcoal suit was wet, his face unreadable. Min-jae stepped toward him. "Did you do this?" Park looked at the burning corridor. "I was ordered to." Naledi watched him. "But you triggered the sprinklers." He met her eyes. "I was also ordered to destroy everything." For a moment none of them moved. Then Park took the old brass key from Min-jae's hand and studied it as though it belonged to another life. "Your mother gave you this?" "Before she died." Park closed his eyes. "She did not die in a car accident." Min-jae's face emptied. Park returned the key. "Not exactly." Sirens approached outside. "Tell us what happened," Naledi said. "I cannot. Not here. You have protected Chairman Kim for 25 years. Park's voice lowered. "And I have spent those same years protecting the last thing he could not bring himself to destroy." He walked away before they could stop him. The next morning, Naledi examined payroll and pension files from Han Seong's earliest years. She searched for Daniel Han, expecting nothing. Instead, she found an employee number with no name attached. It had remained active for nearly 30 years. No salary, no bonus, no tax deduction, only one recurring expense. Private medical services. Every invoice was charged to the same internal location. Facility 7. Naledi brought the record to Min-jae. He read it twice. "There is no Facility 7. Your property register has Facilities 5, 6, and 8. He looked up. The pattern was now impossible to deny. Daniel Han had been erased from history. But Han Seong was still paying to keep someone alive. Naledi and Min-jae searched Han Seong's property records until dawn. Facility 7 did not appear in current registers, insurance schedules, or tax filings. But an old municipal survey listed it as a medical research site on the outskirts of Seoul. A later document marked it decommissioned. There was no demolition permit, no sale, no transfer of ownership. The facility had disappeared only on paper. Before leaving, Min-jae paused beside the window. "I need to tell you something." Naledi waited. "My mother began questioning my father months before she died. I remember arguments behind closed doors. The name Daniel came up once. You never asked. I was 12. My father said Daniel was a former employee who betrayed the company. And you believed him. I wanted my father to be right." Naledi understood. Truth was easier to pursue when it belonged to strangers. "If we find Daniel," Min-jae said, "everything I know about my family may collapse. If we do not find him, you will spend the rest of your life wondering which part was real." He looked at her, not as a vice chairman, but as a son asking permission to be afraid. She rested her hand briefly over his. "You do not have to be fearless. You only have to keep going." They drove out of Seoul as morning traffic thickened around them. Apartment towers gave way to low hills and roadside restaurants. Min-jae stopped at a small service area and returned with 2 hot cups of Yulmu tea. Naledi tasted hers and smiled. "This is not coffee. You have criticized Korean coffee twice." "I was being diplomatic," he laughed, and for a few miles the danger loosened its grip. Facility 7 stood behind rusted gates and an overgrown parking lot. The faded sign read Han Seong Medical Research Institute. Windows were boarded. Ivy climbed the concrete walls. The front entrance was locked, but the rear lock carried fresh scratches. "This place is used regularly," Naledi said. Inside, dust covered the abandoned reception desk. Old wheelchairs stood against one wall. The building looked deserted until Naledi examined the floor. Footprints crossed the dust in a narrow path. Someone cleaned only the areas they used. They followed the tracks down a corridor where every patient room stood open except one. A steel door. Modern keypad. New wiring. The fluorescent lights above it were live. A slow electronic beep sounded from behind the metal. A heart monitor. Min-jae stopped breathing for a moment. Director Park's voice came from behind them. I would not open that door. He stood alone at the end of the corridor. No guards, no weapon, only exhaustion. Min-jae moved between him and Naledi. You followed us. No, I delayed the people who did. Park looked toward the door. I served Chairman Kim for 25 years. I also protected what is behind that door for 25 years. You know who is inside, Naledi said. I have always known. Daniel Han? Park did not answer, but his silence confirmed it. Naledi took a step closer. Why would Chairman Kim erase a man, then pay to keep him alive? Park's gaze shifted to Min-jae. Because guilt is rarely merciful. It is usually selfish. He reached into his coat and produced a small brass key, worn smooth by use. It matched the key Min-jae's mother had left him. This opens the records room beneath the facility. Not the steel door? Only Chairman Kim has that code. Tires rolled across the gravel outside. Several vehicles. Park checked his watch. You have minutes. To do what? Choose whether you came to expose a crime, or save the man who carries its proof. Naledi gripped the key. They followed Park to a maintenance stairwell. Beneath the building, the brass key opened a narrow archive filled with paper medical logs, patent files, and handwritten ledgers. Naledi found the original founder agreement in less than a minute. Daniel Han owned 60% of Hanseong's founding patents. A transfer document dated 1998 claimed he had surrendered them voluntarily. The signature was false. She knew because Daniel's genuine signature began with a heavy downward stroke visible on the surviving invoice. The transfer began lightly, written by someone imitating the shape but not the pressure. Beside it lay a medical report. Daniel Han. Severe stroke following suspected poisoning. Naledi's stomach tightened. Chairman Kim had not merely stolen a company, he had tried to remove the man who built it. Min-jae opened another folder and froze. Inside were annual photographs of him. School ceremonies. Graduation, his first board meeting. Daniel had followed his life from this hidden room. Why? Min-jae whispered. Park answered from the doorway. Because Daniel Han is not only Hanseong's founder. His voice broke for the first time. He is your biological father. The words seemed to remove all sound from the building. Then the steel door upstairs unlocked. Chairman Kim had arrived. Chairman Kim descended the corridor alone. No raised voice. No visible anger. His dark overcoat was immaculate despite the rain outside. He looked first at Min-jae, then at Naledi, then at the open records room. You have been thorough, Miss Maseko. Naledi held the original founder agreement against her chest. You forged Daniel Han's transfer. I approved a document. You stole his patents. Chairman Kim's expression barely changed. I built the company those patents became. You built power. He built Hanseong. Min-jae stood between them, pale but steady. Is Daniel Han my father? For the first time the chairman looked old. Biology is an incomplete definition of fatherhood. That is not an answer. It is the only one that matters. Min-jae's voice hardened. Did you poison him? Chairman Kim glanced at Director Park. Park lowered his eyes. The chairman spoke softly. Daniel intended to expose the transfer. We argued. He collapsed before he reached the authorities. That is not what the medical report says. No, Naledi said. It says suspected poisoning. Chairman Kim looked at her. Suspicion is not proof. Neither is a forged signature until an auditor compares pressure patterns. Neither is a hidden facility until someone follows the medical payments. Neither is an erased founder until the building itself remembers him. His gaze sharpened. For the first time, Naledi knew she had frightened him. Chairman Kim entered the code. The steel door opened. The room beyond was small and warm. A hospital bed stood beside shelves of books. Fresh mugunghwa blossoms rested in a vase near the window. An elderly man looked up. His hair was white, his body thin, but his eyes carried the same quiet intelligence Naledi had imagined behind every surviving trace. You must be the auditor, he said. Naledi could not answer immediately. Daniel Han? He smiled. It has been a long time since a stranger said my name. Min-jae remained at the threshold. Daniel's eyes filled. You have grown. You know me? I knew every birthday, every graduation, every article. I was not allowed to attend any of them. Min-jae took one unsteady step forward. Daniel reached out. Father and son touched hands for the first time. No speech could hold 30 years of stolen life. Their silence did. Chairman Kim watched them, his face composed, but one hand trembled beside his coat. Daniel looked toward him. You should have let me leave. You would have destroyed everything. You destroyed it the moment you decided it belonged only to you. Chairman Kim's voice stayed low. I kept you alive, not for me, for yourself. The truth landed without drama, because everyone in the room already knew it. Chairman Kim had built a private hospital after Daniel's stroke. He had hired specialists, preserved his books, brought flowers, and told himself that maintaining Daniel's body balanced the life he had stolen. It was not mercy, it was guilt disguised as care. Naledi opened her laptop and connected the portable encrypted drive from her audit kit. Chairman Kim watched. What are you doing? Restoring the record. The evidence will destroy Hanseong. No, your lie might. The truth will decide what deserves to survive. She copied the founder agreement, medical reports, payroll trail, altered scans, renovation orders, and photographs. An alert appeared. Network access revoked. Chairman Kim had anticipated her. Naledi did not react. She had already embedded a delayed transfer inside the audit portal when she created the fake Project Orion request. Any attempt to revoke her credentials would release the encrypted package to regulators in Seoul, Johannesburg, London, and New York. The upload began automatically. Chairman Kim looked at the screen. You used my surveillance system. You taught me it was watching. Director Park stepped beside Naledi. The chairman turned to him. Stop her. Park remained still. Sir, I have obeyed you for 25 years. And now? Now I will obey the promise I made to Dr. Leung-ji. Min-jae looked at him. Park's voice softened. Your mother discovered the truth. I was ordered to silence her. I helped her escape instead. She died years later under another name, believing you would be safer if the world thought she was gone. Min-jae closed his eyes. Another grief, another lie. Park placed the brass key in his hand. She asked me to give you this when you chose truth over inheritance. The upload reached 100%. Outside, sirens approached. Chairman Kim straightened his coat and looked at Min-jae. I gave you an empire. Min-jae held his mother's key tightly. You could have given me the truth. For the first time in his life, Chairman Kim had no answer. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Once regulators received Naledi's files, the story crossed 3 continents in hours. Hanseong's board suspended Chairman Kim. Prosecutors sealed offices, seized servers, and questioned executives who had spent decades believing silence was safer than honesty. Chairman Kim did not flee. He did not issue denials. He entered the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's office beneath a wall of cameras and said only, a company may survive failure. It cannot survive a lie. Confession did not erase accountability. He was charged with fraud, evidence tampering, unlawful confinement, and conspiracy connected to Daniel Han's poisoning. Director Park surrendered his own records and accepted responsibility for the years he had helped maintain the deception. Truth did not arrive cleanly. It rarely did. Daniel Han's name was restored to Hanseong's founding documents. His patents were returned to a trust he controlled. Yet when the board offered him the chairman's seat, he refused. My time belongs to what comes next, he said, not to the office that was taken from me. He established the Han Foundation for Ethical Enterprise, funding whistleblower protection, corporate governance research, and forensic accounting scholarships across Asia and Africa. The first scholarship carried Naledi Maseko's name. She laughed when Daniel showed her the certificate. I followed a suspicious account. You followed it when everyone preferred you did not. That is the job. Daniel smiled. Exactly, that is why young people should learn your name. Min-jae resigned as vice chairman. The decision shocked investors more than the scandal itself. He rejected the Kim family shares and adopted the name Min-jae Han in private. Though he did not ask the public to forget the man who had raised him. He loved me in the only way he understood, Min-jae told Naledi one evening beside the Han River. That does not excuse what he did. No, she said. But understanding is not the same as excusing. They had spent weeks surrounded by lawyers, investigators, and cameras. That quiet evening, sharing tteokbokki from a paper cup while cyclists passed beneath the bridge, felt strangely precious. Min-jae looked at her. You are leaving. My work is finished. Is that how you measure everything? Usually, and us? Naledi looked toward the water. I have not found the correct accounting standard. He laughed. And she did too. For once, neither needed an immediate answer. 3 months later, Naledi stood inside Incheon International Airport with her passport in one hand and a boarding pass in the other. Johannesburg finally felt close. Her mother had already planned a welcome dinner large enough for the whole neighborhood. Professor Ndlovu had promised not to discuss work for at least 20 minutes, which meant he would last 5. The final boarding announcement began. Naledi. She turned. Min-jae was crossing the terminal without a suit, an assistant, or the polished distance he once wore like armor. I thought you might leave without saying goodbye. I considered it. I accepted a position. Where? Johannesburg. She stared at him. He smiled. The foundation is opening an African office. They need someone who understands governance partnerships. You have never lived in South Africa. No, but I know one person there. That sounds like poor due diligence. I was hoping you could supervise. Naledi tried not to smile and failed. He handed her a small envelope. Inside was the brass key that had opened his mother's library and Daniel's hidden records. An inscription had been added along its edge. The truth always leaves an audit trail. Naledi ran her thumb over the words. This belongs to you. It belonged to a life built on secrets. I would rather it mark the beginning of something honest. She looked at him for a long moment. No proposal, no grand promise, no demand that she choose his future over her own. Only possibility. So what happens now? She asked. Min-jae lifted his own boarding pass. We stopped letting other people write our story. They walked toward the gate together, not because the future was certain, because, for the first time, it belonged to them. 1 year later, business schools across Asia taught the Hanseom case as a landmark in corporate fraud and ethical governance. Students remembered the forged transfer, the hidden medical payments, and the founder erased from his own company. But the detail most often repeated was smaller. One auditor noticed that money remained in an account for exactly 48 hours every year. That tiny inconsistency broke open an empire. History had not changed, because the most powerful person in the room chose justice. It changed because one person refused to stop asking questions. Numbers can be manipulated, records can be altered, portraits can disappear. But the truth has patience. It waits inside margins, signatures, empty spaces, and forgotten keys. And sooner or later, it finds someone brave enough to follow the trail. If this story stayed with you, share what you would have chosen in Min-jae's place. The family name that raised you, or the truth that could destroy it. And subscribe for more stories where courage, mystery, and love meet at the edge of impossible choices.